So at this point, you learned a lot about the HTMX essentials, and therefore it's now time to practice what you learned. Now, for that, I prepared a brand new starting project. You find it attached. And it's again a very simple Node Express application where I essentially just return one page, which is rendered directly in this app.js file. All the HTML code is included in there as a string, just so that we have it all in one place. And this one page in the end will show us a form and then a list of course goals, which you can manage with help of that form in the end. Now you find the project attached, and after downloading, you should run npm install to install all dependencies, and then npm start to start this development server. And once you did that, if you visit localhost 3000, you should see a page like this. And now your job for this exercise is to use HTMX, which is already included in the starting project, and load it into this page. So you don't need to do that. But your job is to use HTMX to register the submission of this form and to then add a new goal, just the text that was entered by the user, to this course goals array. And of course, since this array is then used down there to output the goals, you should make sure that the goals then do show up on the screen whenever the user did submit a new goal here. Now, to complete this task, you will also need to register a new post route here, which you can do with app post, and you can simply follow the same approach we used before in this section here to then extract the submitted data, and then you just add the submitted text to this course goals array. That should be all you need to do here. And of course, as mentioned, you must make sure that any goals added by the user are then reflected on the screen. You might also notice that all these goals also have a remove button, but you don't need to do anything with that. Therefore, that's your task now, your exercise. Here's a short pause for you to pause the video and try this on your own. Thereafter, we'll solve this together. So let's now solve this task together, and I'll start with handling the form submission. As you learned before, we can add the hx-post attribute to the form so that a post request will be sent whenever the form is submitted. Now, the path to which this request should be sent is up to you, because you own this backend code, and here I'll send it to a /goals route. But again, that is up to you. Of course, we now must add such a /goals post route here to this Express application, which we can do like this, just as we did it before in this section. And in here, I then get my goal text. Maybe let's name it goal text, therefore, by accessing the request body, and then there it will be the goal field that holds the entered text, because this input has a name of goal. And we can extract the submitted data by using that name. So since I chose name goal here, request body will have a goal property which holds the entered text. Now we could add some validation here to check whether some valid value has been entered, but we didn't do that before, and instead that is something we'll explore later in this course, therefore I will not do it here. Instead, I'll simply go to my course goals array and push this goal text into it. So with that, this array is updated, and we're outputting this array down there, but at the moment, we wouldn't see any changes in that list. And actually, at the moment, we would basically send a request that doesn't get back a response, because I am not sending back any response here in my goals post route. And that's, of course, something that should change. And indeed, it is that response that we want to send back, that will allow us to then also make sure that we update the screen and that we reflect all goals, including the new goal, after the form was submitted. And we can essentially use two different approaches here, and I'll show you both, though of course it's fine if you just used one of them for your solution. The first possible approach is to redirect to the root route here. So to this get route in the end. If we do that, HTMX will follow that redirect, and therefore it will receive this entire page as a response. And that's good, because this page will then include all the goals, including the latest goal, so the goal that was just added. Therefore, we can select this part of the response, this unordered list here, and we can replace the unordered list of goals that we have on the current page with that new unordered list that we get back from the response. So that's one possible approach, and I'll show you how it would work. Here I have response redirect, and then on the form, I now also want to add hx select to control which part of the response is swapped into the currently loaded page. And in my case, that should be this unordered list. Now, as you learned, hx select wants a CSS selector here that selects the part of the response that should be swapped in, and we could use ul here to select this unordered list, and that would work. Or to mix things up, we could also select it by ID. And the ID CSS selector here would be hashtag goals. So with that, we would select the right part of the response, so the part we want. And I'll now split this across multiple lines to make it a bit easier to read. Of course, I also want to control where this selected response content is rendered on the existing page. So which part of the existing page is swapped for this response content. And we control that with hx target. And the target, of course, should be the same unordered list, but now we're not targeting the list in the response, but instead on the currently rendered page. So again, we can use hashtag goals here, or the UL selector, or any other CSS selector that selects that list of goals. Well, and then I also want to control how the list is swapped. We can control that with hx swap. Here, the default is inner HTML, which means the content of the targeted list would be replaced with the content selected in the response. And that's actually not what I want, because I'm selecting the entire list in my response. And if I would then just use that to replace the content of the list on the currently active page, I would render the response list inside of the existing list. So I would have nested lists, and that's not what I want. So therefore, what we want here instead is outer HTML, which makes sure that we replace the existing list with the list from the response. And that should then be all. With these HTMX attributes added to the form, we should be able to save everything, and we should be able to add goals here. And as you can tell, this seems to work here, since these goals are showing up here. So that's one way of solving this, and it's an absolutely fine way of solving this. But there also is an alternative. Instead of redirecting here, we could also directly return some HTML fragment that can then be used by HTMX. And therefore here, we could directly send back the updated list, or actually maybe just that one list item that was added. Because why would we send back the entire updated list? It's just one new list item that's added here. So why don't we just send back that one list item? So therefore, that's what I'm doing here. I'm sending back a new list item, which outputs the goal text, and which should also have an ID to be in line with the other list items here, that is goal-index. So goal dash, and then the question is, what is the index of that list item? Well, since I'm pushing it into this array, it will be the last item in that array. So it's course goals.length minus 1. Course goals.length minus 1. That will be the index of this newly added list item. And with that, I'm just sending back this HTML fragment, which is something you often do when working with HTMX, and you have full control over the backend, because that then allows us to change that front-end code, this HTMX code. We no longer need to select anything from the response, because now the entire response is just what we need, so we can get rid of that. And of course, now we need to change hx swap, because I'm still targeting my list of goals, but now I don't want to replace the entire list with that one list item I get back in my response. Instead, I want to append that one list item after the existing items in that list. And we can do that with the before end setting, which will insert the response content into the targeted element after all the elements that are already in the targeted element. And with that done, if we save that and reload, and I again start adding goals, like this, you see that still works, though I of course forgot one thing, that remove button here. That should also be there. Therefore, I'll quickly go back and actually copy this structure inside such a goal list item and replace my goal text here with that structure. And that should again be goal text, so that we send back a list item like this. But with that change in place, if I now reload, that looks much better here. And that's an alternative way of solving this.